Hey guys, it's me, Carrie. We're shooting in a new location, obviously, if you're not watching me for the first time. We're shooting in my room, which is crazy, messy, and gross, and super cluttered, but, you know, that's the story of my life. But I didn't know where else to shoot today. I thought the kitchen light was weird, and outside is not even an option. It's like -degrees out, I think, with the wind chill. So we're shooting in my room, and we'll see how this goes. But anyway, this is a tag video that my friend, oh gosh, I hope I'm getting the name of her channel right, Tammy's Makeup Treats. I will double check and I'll post a link in the Dropbox once I get the correct link for her. But she didn't tag me in it per se, but it sounded like a fun tag to do, so I'm doing it anyway. And a few of these questions I might have answered in a previous, like, getting to know you tag, but I don't do them that often, so you'd have to, like, scroll way back to even remember. But anyway, the first question is, are you named after anyone? Not exactly. My mother went to high school with a girl whose name was Carrie, and her middle name was Anne, and that is my first and middle name, and it was spelled like me, K-A-R-I, and then capital A-N-N, 2 words. And she didn't really know her. I mean, she knew of her, but, you know, obviously to hear the name, and she thought it was kind of a cool name, but it wasn't like I was being named after her, like that girl had any significance in her life or anything. She just dug the name. So no, I'm not named after anyone, but a real person did inspire my mother, I guess, to come up with the name. Where am I from? I am from Long Island. I am not going to name the specific city because it's small and I feel like that's too much information, but I am a born and raised Long Island, New York girl. I lived in Long Island all my life for the first 31 years of my life. In December of 2004, my husband and I moved to Florida and we lived there until February of 2013. That's a whole long story, but we moved back then, and we've been back on Long Island ever since, once again in the house I grew up in, living with my mom, which is not ideal, but it is what it is. So I am from Long Island. Which of my parents am I most like? Well, my father has been gone for, gosh, how many years was it this year? 2017 marked 18 years in December since he passed away. Not that I don't remember what my father was like, obviously. But, I mean, I was 26 when my dad died. I'm 44 now. I'm sure I've changed an awful lot since then. On a physical level, I mean, I have my father's eyes for sure. My dad and I both had and have, in my case, blue eyes. My mother's eyes are brown, and my brother had hazel eyes. So you got a little mix for both of them, I guess. But my mom was blonde. She still is, but she enhances it. So do I. I get highlights, but I am a natural blonde. Excuse me. Features-wise, I definitely look more like my mother, I think. But when I look at pictures of my dad when he was a little kid and me when I was a little kid, I can see more similarities there. But personality-wise, is really a split, because as far as anxiety and depression and lack of self-esteem, inability to adequately take responsibility for things sometimes, those kinds of personality traits are definitely more my mother. I think I have my father's sense of humor. Very dry, very left of center at times. Not everybody gets us. My father and I really got each other. Like, my ability to, like, spontaneously come up with the most ridiculous poems and rhymes was my dad all the way. Like, when my friend Elaine used to come over all the time when we were in high school, and my dad just made up this thing. He would always ask her, where's my present? Where's my present? And I don't know where it came from, and he'd always ask her for a gift. And at one point, and Elaine, if you're watching this, I doubt you are, but I'm going to need to ask you what you got him, because I can't remember. But one day she did come over and bring him a present. My father was so floored by that. But he would always make up, like, these ridiculous rhymes for her and for a couple other friends of mine that I'm no longer friends with, and they used to just crack up. So, humor-wise, I'm like my father. My father was very social. He was very comfortable, although as he got older, he became very ill for the last, I want to say, at least 10 years or probably more of his life. He was very seriously ill. He had a collapsed lung, one at 50% capacity, so he couldn't breathe well. He had a trach tube in his neck. He had a pacemaker. He had adult onset diabetes. So he had a lot of issues, and he became more depressed and less sociable, but in his nature. It was just his nature to be generous, to be social, to take care of others. I don't know about the social part, but the taking care of others, I think I got from my dad. So, I mean, I don't know. Honestly, it's probably about a 50-50 split. That's a very long answer, but that's the best one I can give you. What is my favorite food? Off the top of my head, the thing that I love to eat most, and eat not as often as I'd like, because it's not the cheapest thing. I love crab legs. Love them. Love, love, love. And shrimp. Any type of shrimp. Unless it's like really spicy. I don't like spicy food too much. But any kind of shrimp, but crab legs probably be number one. Let's see, what is my favorite pastime? Well, I love to write. I'm sure you guys all know that. I write poetry. I write short stories. I've been doing that since I was a little girl. I have notebooks, like stacks and stacks of notebooks somewhere in this house of stories that I just wrote on my own, starting from the time I was about 12. I started writing poetry. As far as I know, I was like, I got a class assignment to write a poem when I was 7. I think it was 2nd grade. And I still remember the poem. My mom actually found it a few years ago, so it's not like I've remembered it since I was 7. But my mom found it a few years ago, and it gave me feels, because I thought, yeah, even then, I really love to write. So writing is number one. I love to watch TV and movies. I like to work on my junk journal. I like to make beaded jewelry and do all sorts of other crafty stuff. And yeah, those are probably my favorite things. Obviously collecting things, which is ridiculous how many things I collect. I'm trying to cut back, but lip balm being the number one thing. I'm trying to collect on like limit how many collections I have and how many types of toys I collect. Like mostly now, as far as toys, I'm pretty much just sticking to Tsum Tsums, but there's a few other things that I'll find every now and then that I'll pick up. But those are my favorite toy things to collect, I think. And figural key rings, I love those too. What is my favorite childhood memory? Again, off the top of my head, camping. My family used to go camping every summer from the time I was about 3. From what I've been told. My brother was born when I was 3, and I literally, I think there are pictures somewhere of us, on a campground with my mother holding, my newborn brother or the couple months old brother. We wouldn't go far. We'd go within the state of New York or to Jersey, Connecticut, or Pennsylvania. That was pretty much as far as we ever went. But, we went camping 2 or 3 times this summer. We never owned, a motorhome or anything fancy like that. We had a van, and we had tents, a tent. My brother and I would sleep in the tent. My parents would sleep in the van. Although when we were really little, my brother and I would sleep with my parents in the van. My mom and dad would open up the bed, and, depending, I don't remember if they would sleep on the bed and my brother and I slept on the floor, or if we switched off. I honestly don't recall. Knowing my parents, because they were pretty selfless, they would give my brother and I the bed when we were little kids, really small, when it didn't matter, a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, sleeping in a bed together. Obviously, as we aged, that got a little weird, so that was around the time we probably got the tent anyway. But, going camping, and we would go with a lot of other families. We called ourselves the Long Island Campers, and there were about there were, not every family would go on every trip, but when we got the max number of families to go, there would probably be at least 20 different families that would go together, and we'd caravan. And this was the 70s and 80s, so everybody had a CB radio in their vehicle, and we would play trivia games on the CB, and usually it was the adults that would play, but I remember one time the question was something about who played Carrie on Little House on the Prairie or something, and I was shouting out, Lindsay Sidney Greenbush, Lindsay Sidney Greenbush, and it's actually 2 different girls. I'm actually friends with one of them now on Twitter, but they were billed that way, so people wouldn't necessarily realize that they were twins, that it was 2 different girls, and my mom looked around huh, she seems pretty sure about this, Doug, and we don't know who the hell is on Little House on the Prairie, so they gave my answer, and it was right, and I was yeah, I felt so, vindicated, because they didn't really let the kids play. And my father we used to have this Coleman little, about this big, I guess, a propane stove. And my dad would get up usually before anybody else, and he would cook breakfast on the Coleman for everybody that went. So sometimes, 20 families, figured at least a couple, and maybe, most of them all had kids. So figure 3 people times 20 families, he'd be cooking for like at least 60 different people on a tiny Coleman stove. But he would cook for every single person as they got up over the course of like probably 2 hours, because he loved to cook. And it just made me so happy to see him so happy, and, just know that my dad was taking care of everybody. That made me feel like $1,000,000. I felt like, yeah, my dad's pretty awesome. So anyway, yeah, a lot of camping memories. I could think of others, but that's what popped into my head first. What is my favorite snack? That really depends on my mood. I could go for salty or I could go for sweet. I'd love to say it's like fruit and vegetables and all healthy things, but as you can tell by the fact that I'm a fat load, it's not. I don't know. For a really, 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 really long time, my favorite candy was Reese's peanut butter eggs and any other incarnation of the holiday Reese's, because to me they taste completely different than regular Reese's peanut butter cups. Some people think I'm crazy. Many of you understand. I feel like there's more peanut butter to chocolate consistency in the holiday ones, and it's a little bit softer, the peanut butter, maybe a little oilier. I don't know, it tastes better to me. But about a year ago, I had a a Hershey's almond chocolate bar for the first time in ages, and I was like, oh, this is pretty awesome too. So I almost would say it's debatable now that Hershey's with almonds is my favorite candy bar, but I love all candy. I also love Swedish Fish. Those are my favorite, probably non-chocolate candy. The red ones in particular are my absolute faves. But if I want something salty, I don't know, I guess I used to always go for like potato chips first. Now not so much. Lately my husband's been buying, he bought on QVC several months ago, he bought these snack mixes, and they had like some salty and some sweet things in them. Like it's fruit and nuts and chocolates all mixed together, like I guess like a trail mix kind of thing you would call it. I'm really enjoying that a lot lately, so it's kind of satisfies both the salty and sweet cravings. So I don't know, I kind of tend to lean towards that. I like those kinds of things. Excuse me. Favorite team? Don't have one. Don't care about organized sports in any way, shape, or form. I love watching the Olympics. I will watch any event. I'm really stoked that the Olympics are coming up next month. But my favorite sport is figure skating. So, obviously, I guess Team USA, when it comes to the Olympics, because, I got a lot of pride in my country or whatever, but, I'm not into team sports. I don't really care. I mean, I root for New York teams when they get to the Super Bowl or they get to the World Series or, the Stanley Cup or whatever, but I don't have a vested interest in team sports. I don't really enjoy them, so don't really have a favorite team. I have a Yankees cap, but basically it was because it had the Yankees and New York logo in pink, and the cap was navy, and I thought it was a cute cap. I root for the Mets, too. I root for any team from New York, so I guess any New York team would be my favorite team. Long Island or New York City based specifically, though. Like, I'm not really into like Buffalo or anything like that. No offense, Buffalo, but do I prefer cats or dogs? Definitely cats. I'm learning to appreciate dogs a lot more in the 2 years that I've been volunteering in animal shelter, but I've never had a dog. I've had 4 cats in my life. I currently still have 2 of them, luckily. One of them we lost in 2012, and one we lost when I was a child. We had Garfield we got him when I was around 12, and unfortunately back then people didn't know what they know now, or that's what I like to to tell myself. But he was an indoor-outdoor cat, and he was hit by a car when he was only 6, which is heartbreaking. My neighbor actually saw the whole thing, so we lost Garfield after just 6 years when I was 18. But I love dogs too, don't get me wrong, but I've never had one, so I don't feel as well acquainted with dogs, and I'm used to cats. I'm used to their, more aloof personalities. I would love to have an animal that unconditionally just showed me affection like dogs seem to, pretty much universally, but I've never had one, so I'm kind of used to cat style, and they trust only a few, or unless you're the rare exception like my friend Jen's cat Coraline, who literally loves every single person in the world. But sorry, I'm snuffling, but yeah, long answer again, but I prefer cats, I guess, still. Am I afraid of heights? Under certain circumstances, but not all. The last time I went on a Ferris wheel, my father was deathly afraid of heights, and yet he loved going on Ferris wheels, and nobody else in my family really did. So towards the end of his life, I remember us taking a trip to Six Flags in New Jersey, and there is a Ferris wheel there. I don't know if it's still there, probably is. That was really, as far as I know, it was the largest, highest one that I've ever been on. I recall it being very, very, very high. And as a kid, Ferris wheels didn't bother me, but as I got older, they frightened me. And this one really scared the crap out of me because it was super, super high, but my dad really wanted to go on, and I didn't want him to go by himself. That's no fun. So I went on with him, and I literally, like, prayed, and I'm not a praying person. I literally was like, God, you can't be cruel enough to let me die because my cart falls off the Ferris wheel and I come crashing down to the earth and die. But please, anyway, just, I'm putting it out there, don't let that happen, please. I was so scared. But yet, like, I can go to the top of the Empire State Building or top of the Rock, or, you know, back in the day, the old World Trade Center. I haven't been to the new one yet, and I haven't been to any of those other places in years. Probably the last tall building I went to was Top of the Rock with my mom, and that was when we were still living in Florida, and I was visiting New York, so I want to say that was probably about 8 or 9 years ago. But, like, I can do that, and I can go to the edge, and I can look, you know, I mean, they have fences and stuff, so it's safe, you know, obviously you're not going to fall off the roof, but, like, that didn't scare me. That doesn't scare me. Going on, like, a balcony at a hotel on a high floor doesn't really scare me. Well, I mean, I don't know that I'd go outside on it. I'd, like, look over the edge, maybe, out the window. But Ferris wheels, I haven't been on one since my father died. They scare the crap out of me, just being up that high. So, am I afraid of heights? Yes, under certain circumstances. Let's see. We're getting there, guys. I know, I didn't mean for this to be super, super long, but I can't answer anything in, you know, brief sentences. First book I ever read, I have no idea. I do know because my mother has told me that I started reading when I was 3. I was in preschool. I watched a lot of PBS. I don't know how I learned. You know, I think I taught myself a lot from just watching Sesame Street and stuff. Because I don't know if I started reading before or after I started attending preschool, but I was reading at 3. Not to brag or whatever, but I was. It's just a fact. And my mother used to tell me stories that, like, she and my grandmother would take me to the mall, and one day I just started reading names of the stores, and they looked at this little 3-year-old kid, and they were like, oh my God, did Carrie just say JCPenney, you know, or whatever? And I was reading names of the stores, and that's how they knew I learned how to read. So, I mean, I would imagine it was probably something Dr. Seuss, because I still love Dr. Seuss, and, you know I had those books when I was a little girl, so I want to say it was probably, like, Green Eggs and Ham or something, but, I mean, I don't have any specific memory of it, so I have no idea, but that's just my best guess. Favorite, excuse me, genres of music. I love 80s music. I know that's not really a genre, but I love music from the 80s just because that was, you know, when I grew up. And even though I was pretty unhappy in the 80s a lot of the time, I've been unhappy in most decades of my life, let's get real. I don't know, 80s music just gives me feels, particularly new wave one-hit wonders. Like songs like, oh God, I can't think of... Don't Put Another Dime in the Jukebox by the Flirts. Like, that's my jam. I love that song so much. They weren't really one-hit wonders, but I love The Waitresses. Like, I love Christmas Wrapping by The Waitresses. I Know What Boys Like. Oh gosh, what other tunes? I mean, really anything from the 80s. I mean, One Night in Bangkok, Murray Head, that's such a freaking great tune, and whatever happened to him, although I think he might have actually gone on to compose for Broadway or theatrical productions, if I'm not mistaken. Was he involved in Chess? I think he might have been involved in Chess. I think that song was actually in the show Chess. But anyway, yeah, 80s tunes, particularly one-hit wonders, new wave, edge to them, those are probably my favorite types of music to this day. My favorite subject in school, that was a long time ago, but it was absolutely English. I never got the opportunity to take a creative writing class until college. My high school was so small, I graduated in a class of 98, including me. It was the second smallest high school on Long Island at the time. And I don't know how much it's grown in all those many, many years since, but probably not a whole hell of a lot. Excuse me. But yeah, I always loved to write, obviously, and I'm a pretty damn good speller, so, like, I'm not great at grammar, though, even now. Like, I still, you know, am not sure, like, I'll occasionally put, an apostrophe in it's when it's not supposed to be. And, I have to remember that's, like stuff like that. I don't know, it's goofy that, I'm good at writing and I'm good at spelling, but grammar still is not my strongest point. But, but anyway, yeah, my school was so small. They didn't offer a lot of extracurriculars, and they didn't offer a lot of like elective type fun classes like that. I mean, there was no drama class in my school. There was no creative writing class. There was no, just so many classes that are so, everyday common. I mean, now forget it. There's like probably the most specialized classes in every type of subject you could possibly want. My friend Amy's daughters take like robotics and stuff. I mean, that's so cool to me. Like, we literally had, reading, writing, and arithmetic, and it was pretty much about that. It came to my senior year in high school. I was always in the advanced classes. So basically, I screwed myself because I took the classes that were a grade level ahead of my own, but I never got like any rewards for doing that. They should have just moved me up a grade, because then at least I would have not felt like a freak that could never do well enough. Like, this is the logic of my high school. I'm going on a little rant here, but this is so ridiculous to me. In my advanced math class, my accelerated math class, I want to say in probably 10th grade. So I was taking 11th grade level math in 10th grade. There were 11th graders in the class. When we would take exams, the 11th graders would have their grades weighted up over ours. Now, wait a minute. We're already taking a grade level ahead of where we're supposed to be, but yet the people that were taking their own grade level work had their grades weighted to be higher than ours because they were somehow at a disadvantage to the kids that were a year younger. Like, that's how ridiculous my school was. So, I mean, if I had been smart, I would have just refused to be in the accelerated program and just stayed with my own grade level and gotten easy A's all my life instead of busting my butt to, get A's and B's. So, yeah, I hated the way my school worked, and I just, there's nothing about high school and the way that high school was run that I agree with, and I think they really made life a lot harder for me than it needed to be. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But my favorite subject was English, so yeah, we'll leave it at that. Do I have any tattoos? I do not, but I want one, and I'm thinking very seriously about getting it this year. April 16th, apparently, is World Semicolon Day, and I've wanted a semicolon ever since I heard about the semicolon program, which is like a global, like, thing, that basically a semicolon represents a lot to a lot of different people. People with mental illness, people in any type of recovery, whether it's eating disorders, whether it's substance abuse, alcoholism, drug addiction, any type of addiction, like I said, any type of mental illness. Basically, the semicolon represents someone who, at one point, is or was suicidal, but made the decision not to end their life. You can end a sentence with a period, and that's final, and that's permanent. A semicolon represents a pause, like where you could have chosen to end with a period, but you said, nope, I'm going to continue on, and there's more coming. So I love the symbolism of the semicolon, and I was in an online session with my dear friend Jane, who hosts something called Jane's Dancing Hands. You can look it up on Facebook, or just, go online and look up janesdancinghands.com and find out more about that. But I was in a group session one time, and I just got this idea to sketch, and I can't draw for crap, but I sketched out a semicolon with butterfly wings. And, like, the comma part of the semicolon had the wings on it, not attached, like, adjacent to, so you could still see that it was a comma part of a semicolon, and then the dot on the top had antennas coming out. Again, not attached, but adjacent to, so you could absolutely still see that it was permanently a semicolon, but it was made into a butterfly, and butterflies are also very significant to me. So my sketch was just really crappy and basic, but I want a butterfly semicolon on my left wrist. So on World Semicolon Day on April 16th, that's actually 2 days after my 14th wedding anniversary. I know, right? Because, how can you believe that? But anyway, I thought, since it's right around my anniversary, since it's our 14-year anniversary, and I'm obsessed with the number 4. I would have been married on 4/4/04 if it hadn't fallen during Easter week, and it wouldn't have cost twice as much to take a honeymoon that week, because I was like, old school, I'm getting married, and then I'm taking my honeymoon that day, that's it. So we chose the 14th of April instead, so we did 4/14/04. but it's my 14th anniversary. It'll be 2 days after that. So I just thought, yeah, I want to do it. I want to do it. So if I have the money and I can work up the courage, I will get my first tattoo probably on April 16th of this year. Best physical feature, that's really easy. None, because I don't like anything about how I look. I really don't. I guess I would just go with my eyes just because they remind me of my father. And biggest accomplishment, I don't think I've made my biggest accomplishment yet. Not killing myself, if that's an accomplishment. I guess that's probably it, because I've thought about it many, many times. Going back to the whole semicolon thing, I've never made an attempt, ever. Like, not even gotten close, not even made a plan, but just in my mind knew that I wanted to die. And it was more a wish to just not wake up than it was an actual intention to want to kill myself. But the fact that I'm still alive is my biggest accomplishment, because so many times I haven't given a crap if I was or not, and now I really do. Now I value my life a lot, even though I still suffer from depression and anxiety, and I know that that's never going away, and I have better days and I have worse days. The fact that that's not an option anymore for me is my biggest accomplishment. That I may have momentary flashes of, it would be alright if I didn't wake up tomorrow, but I know I have people who love me, my husband and my mother and, many of my friends, they would be angry and crushed and hurt if I did that, so I wouldn't want to do that to them. So it's not really something that even crosses my mind anymore. Not often, anyway. But, yeah, so my biggest accomplishment is still being alive. And that may sound stupid, but it's the truth. Alright, guys, we're at 27 minutes, just about. I'm sorry I rambled, but you had to know that I would, because I can't help myself. 16 questions, though. That's less than 2 minutes a question. That's actually not horrible for me. But anyway, I'm going to shut up now. I hope you don't mind the clutter in the background, because this is actually kind of a comfortable place to shoot, because I can lean forward and on my old laptop, and it's not hurting my back too much. So, yeah. Thanks for watching, guys. I love you so much. Happy 2018 if this is your first time seeing me this year or ever, and I'll be back soon with more stuff. Bye.